There is something called, in the Pentagon, there's something called Joint All-Demand Command Control, which is actually breaks down to the JADC2. And what they're trying to do is take all the Joint Chiefs of Staff and all the secretaries and everything else and all the divisions of the military branches and put them under one command, similar to what China has. But Chinese, they have, yes, it was like the president of the country runs everything and you do as he tells you to, and watch how you question him, because if you question him the wrong way, you're planting rice the next day. Oh, you're in the field planting rice, son. But all their military is under one, outside the president, but there's under one person who runs everything, and he has everybody reports to him. Well, in the United States, they're going to try to do the same thing. All the Marine Corps, the Navy, the Coast Guard, Space Force now will report to one person who's sitting on top, will have all this information in front of them, computer readout, that is, and will make the decision for everybody else. And especially for war, what you want to do is bring all the branches together so they all can be used in an event of, let's say, Ukraine, which we're unofficially not doing, but you're bringing everybody together so you can do is this specialties can do this. This is a bombing run over here. You're feeding off the satellites above you, and hopefully you have satellites that the Russians can't destroy. Oh, you better know if you go to war. If you go to war with somebody, they're going to go after your infrastructure. They're going to go after your satellites and everything else. But you're trying to bring everybody together under one central command group, and they will make the decision that, hey, SEAL over here, Rangers over there, right, doing an operation. Or maybe an AI controlling everybody. Yes. It was very hard, that thing. And say, well, why do the Chinese, as I said before, Mao, everybody reported to Mao and that little group of people there, the whole country. It was pretty well said. Under communist dictatorship, the guy who sits on top, everybody reports to that person decides. It's kind of like Putin in Russia. All branches report to Putin. All the generals report to Putin. And Putin decides what is launched and what isn't. What missile goes here, what drone goes there. He decides. Maybe his computer, he punches in something and computer loads everything else. But he's the guy on top. He's the guy who you report to. He is the king of Russia, the president of Russia, what's that German word for leader again? Of Russia. That's right. He's responsible for everything. Even if there is a mistake, he's responsible for things. When he wants to when Putin wants to call up 100,000 people, nobody's nothing. Well, here in the United States, it's no longer that. It's all volunteers. Boy, man, what does that mean? Well, you're in military reserve. You get to go to the front lines. But in here, they're fighting. They're running into problems because you got to remember, every general or admiral or captain at a military base basically runs the military base. Does he ever call Washington, D.C. for anything? Rarely. He basically has been trained to run the whole lot. He's the mayor of the base. The mayor. Yeah, he's basically the mayor. So the joint JADC2 is everything. Everybody reports to the general on the base. We got all the little sergeants in there, but they all basically go up the line. They all report to him. They may see the files and everything else. And that's what they're trying to do, is bring all the branches together where they are that thing. Like I said, in China, but they've been doing it for 50 years or whatever it is, or 75 years in China. 70 years? 47? With that thing. But it's all under one control. And nobody, under the systems like that, you don't think for yourself. Soldier, you don't think for yourself. You do what he says to do, and he reports to someone else, with that thing. Will they ever get to that in the United States? That would be, is there a God? Can you pray enough? Huh? It's rough. It's rough. And other countries are the same way. Well, not all the countries. Let me put it this way. There was once a king in England, and everybody reported to the king. Very few people went off ventures to themselves. When they were fighting in the United States, almost all of them had to go to a central command in the United States and report to that person, even though it took 2 or 3 weeks to get an answer from. Whereas the rebels, the revolutionary rebels, were a mixture of ragtag farmers trying to fight a well-organized army. And it took somebody from a Polish officer to whip them in, or Polish and German officer to whip them into a fighting army, to fight a fighting army. But still, a lot of actions with that thing. But again, when the war was over, all these people just scattered. It was, the United States really never had a working military force. It took basically a War of 1812. Then it took a civil war. Again, the Civil War, you had a lot of factions out there doing their own thing. A lot of them didn't do their own thing. They were, a lot of generals in the Civil War were basically West Point graduates, could have a hard time wiping their own, or putting on their own socks. A big difference. World War I, World War II, basically were run by generals who never had a really, we're going to report to Washington. Why? I know what I'm doing. Yeah. And now it's basically they're trying to get something like the Europeans. You go to France, they got a central command. You go to Britain, they got a central command. You go to Germany, they got a central command. And many European nations have that central command. All their little operations go to one set of people. Good luck, America. They're trying to keep up with the Chinese. Remember, China had emperors for centuries. Yeah, we're only a few hundred years old. They have centuries to look back on. Everybody reported to the emperor. Nobody thought for themselves. Under kings, you didn't think for yourself. Tsarist Russia. You basically reported to Tsarist Russia, or the clique up there, decided the fate of the country. Here, hodgepodge of, I hate to say, misfits in the past, highly uneducated, highly educated that, what can I say? Well, will we finally get to that point? And then, as I would say, the joint of everybody together is a future war, because your airplane up in the sky is going to be communicating with a satellite up there, as well as something on the ground. And if you have ground troops down there looking for air cover, somebody up a joint control will give you air cover. Could be a drone, could be a hog. Is that right? Warthog? Could be a gunship. Could be a drone gunship. So, oh well. I was saying, well, in a few years we may get our act together. Hopefully we get our act together before China attacks us. It's like, yeah, well, yes. Or we get our act together before Putin wipes out every man, woman, and child in Ukraine, and he has to set aside for the rest of Europe. Just think this could have been a peaceful century.